Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into one of humanity's big questions, population growth.
Yeah, it's a huge topic.
We're going to unpack how different thinkers, from way back when to now, have tried to understand this really complex relationship between people, resources, and, well, society itself. This deep dive, it's going to give you some insights that go beyond just the numbers, hopefully connecting some dots for you.
Absolutely. And it's a field with just so many different viewpoints. It really challenges how we think about things like scarcity, progress.
Right.
We'll look at not just how populations change, but also the big implications of those changes for everyone.
Okay, so to really get a handle on this, we kind of have to start with Thomas Malthus. His ideas back in 1798, they made quite a splash.
Oh, definitely. A seismic impact, you could say.
His main idea was pretty stark, wasn't it? Population grows exponentially.
Like geometrically, yeah. Like 2, 4, 8, 16.
While the food supply, that only grows arithmetically, like 1, 2, 3, 4.
Exactly. And for Malthus, this spelled trouble, an almost inevitable crisis in his view.
He predicted population would just eventually outrun the food supply.
Which would lead to what he called positive checks. Things like famine, disease, war.
The really grim outcomes.
Yeah. But to avoid that, he also talked about preventive checks. These were more about moral choices.
Like delaying marriage.
Celibacy, basically reducing births through restraint.
Okay. But his theory, it's faced a lot of criticism over the years, right? Especially looking back now.
Oh, absolutely. Major critiques.
What were the biggest ones?
Well, I think the most significant blind spot was his underestimation of technological change. He just didn't foresee something like the Green Revolution.
Right, which massively increased food production later on, using new seeds, fertilizers.
Precisely. Food production could grow much faster than he thought.
But it wasn't just technology, it was also a deeper underestimation of human adaptability.
How societies change.
Yeah, how ingenuity itself could change the equation, how social structures evolve, how views on family size change. All things that massively affect birth rates, which he didn't fully factor in.
Okay, so Malthus had this view, but then you get Karl Marx, who had a completely different take. A powerful challenge.
A very different perspective, yes. Marx flat out rejected Malthus's core idea that population growth itself was the root problem.
He saw it through an economic lens instead.
Entirely. For Marx, the problem wasn't too many people. It was about how resources were distributed, or rather misdistributed, under capitalism.
So in his view, poverty, hunger, those weren't caused by overpopulation.
No, he argued they were direct results of capitalist exploitation, of wealth being concentrated.
So if wealth was shared fairly,
then even a large population wouldn't necessarily face scarcity or suffering, according to Marx. He really shifts the blame.
that sets up a really clear contrast then. Malthus points to sort of natural limits or individual choices, while Marx points squarely at the economic system.
Exactly. Is it nature or is it the system? Two fundamentally opposing views on scarcity. It really shows how philosophy shapes the theory.
Okay, so let's move on. There's a more modern model, one that's, well, pretty widely accepted today, right? The demographic transition theory.
Yes, this one offers a more dynamic picture. It helps us understand how population growth patterns tend to change as countries develop economically and socially.
It lays out stages, doesn't it? Kind of a journey nations go through.
That's a good way to put it. It maps how societies typically shift from high birth and death rates to low ones, usually in 4 main stages.
Okay, walk us through them. Stage 1.
Stage 1 is your pre-industrial society. You've got high birth rates, but also really high death rates due to disease, poor sanitation, famine risk. So the population's fairly stable, maybe grows very slowly.
Then things start to change.
Right. Stage 2 is where you see the death rates start to plummet. This is thanks to, better public health, sanitation, medicine, more reliable food.
Okay.
But birth rates stay high, at least for a while. Family size norms, they take longer to adjust.
And that gap means?
Rapid population growth. This is often when countries are starting to industrialize.
Got it. Then stage 3.
In stage 3, the birth rate finally starts to fall too. Why? Well, urbanization plays a big role. Education, especially for women, increases. Access to family planning improves.
Kids become less of an economic asset, maybe.
Exactly. More of an investment. So birth rates drop, and population growth starts to slow down quite a bit.
And finally, stage 4.
Stage 4 is where both birth and death rates are low and pretty stable. This leads to the population stabilizing, maybe growing very slowly, or even starting to decline slightly. Think of most developed countries today.
That maps it out clearly, but you hinted earlier there might be more, a fifth stage.
Yeah, that's a really important point now. Some researchers talk about a stage 5. This is where the birth weight falls below the replacement level.
Meaning not enough babies are born to replace the parents.
Correct. So the population actually starts shrinking, not just stabilizing. We're seeing this, or worrying about it, in places like Japan, Germany, Italy.
And that brings its own set of challenges, like an aging population, workforce issues.
Absolutely. Significant societal challenges.
So this whole demographic transition theory, it really helps make sense of the global picture today. You can see why, say, India is still growing significantly,
Likely still in stage 3, moving towards 4.
while Italy is facing decline.
Possibly entering or already in stage 5. It gives us a framework for understanding these diverse national situations.
It's a really useful lens. Okay, one more major perspective to cover: Esther Boserup.
Ah, yes. Boserup offers a fascinating counterpoint, especially to Malthus, a much more optimistic view.
She directly challenged his pessimism, right? Almost flipped it on its head.
She really did. Her core idea, often called the Boserup hypothesis, is that population growth isn't the problem Malthus thought it was. In fact, it's the solution.
How so? Population pressure drives innovation.
Exactly. She argued that as population grows and puts pressure on resources, especially food, it forces people to innovate. Necessity is the mother of invention.
So more people needing food pushes us to find better ways to grow it.
Precisely. Or develop new technologies, improve farming techniques, maybe change land use patterns, develop better ways to manage resources in cities. Human ingenuity rises to the challenge because of the pressure.
That's a completely different way of looking at it. Not scarcity leading to disaster, but scarcity sparking progress.
It's a belief in our capacity to adapt and overcome limits, driven by the very growth Malthus feared. A fundamentally optimistic take.
Wow, okay. So we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's try and bring it together for the listener.
Good idea. A quick recap.
We started with Malthus, warning about population outstripping resources, the positive and preventive checks, though maybe underestimating innovation.
Then Marx, who shifted the focus entirely, blaming inequality in the capitalist system, not population numbers per se.
Right. Then the demographic transition theory, giving us that staged model of how birth and death rates change with development, explaining shifts over time.
And finally, Boserup, challenging Malthus directly, arguing that population pressure actually drives innovation and progress.
So how do these, historical theories connect to what's happening now? Are they still relevant?
Oh, I think more relevant than ever, honestly. When you look at today's big global challenges, climate change, resource management, migration patterns, those shifting demographics we talked about, aging populations in some places, youth bulges in others.
Yeah.
Each of these theories gives us a different valuable way to analyze what's going on. Malthusian concerns about limits haven't vanished. Marx's questions about distribution are obviously still critical. The demographic transition helps explain the shifts we see, and Boserup's ideas about innovation are central to finding solutions.
So it's not necessarily about picking one winner, maybe.
Probably not. They each offer a piece of the puzzle. Understanding these different perspectives helps us grapple with the complexity.
So a final thought for everyone listening. As we face these constantly evolving global challenges, which of these ideas, or maybe some blend of them, seems most useful for understanding our future?
Yeah, what new kinds of checks, maybe environmental ones, are emerging? Or what kind of innovations, maybe social or technological, will our current demographic shifts inspire?
Lots to think about there, something to ponder until our next deep dive.